Who do sorcerers really call upon? For centuries, the same kind of stories have been told about midnight rituals. A dark room, strange symbols drawn in candlelight, unfamiliar words whispered under the breath, and then the question that lodges itself in the mind. Who do sorcerers really call upon? In much of the Muslim world, the answer often leads to one place: jinn and satanic forces. But why? Why is it that when people hear the word magic, they do not only imagine hidden words, strange symbols, or dark rituals, but also unseen beings? Part of the answer is that in Islam, the unseen world is not treated as pure fantasy. The Qur'an speaks openly about the existence of jinn. There is even an entire chapter, Surah Al-Jinn, dedicated to them. Qur'an recitation insert, Surah Al-Jinn, 72:1.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. قل أوحي إلي أنه استمع نفر من الجن فقالوا إنا سمعنا قرآنا عجبا.
This tells us something important. In Islam, the unseen is not dismissed as myth. But there is a critical distinction here. Recognizing the existence of jinn is one thing. Turning them into the center of fear is another. Because in Islam, jinn are also created beings, just like humans. They have will. Among them are those who believe and those who go astray. So the reality is more complex than the way folklore often presents it. They are not all the same. They are not all evil. They do not possess absolute power, and none of them operate as an independent force outside the will of Allah. But this still doesn't fully explain why magic and jinn are so often linked together in people's minds. That is because the issue of sorcery is not completely ignored in the Islamic tradition. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 102, the Qur'an speaks about people being taught magic and how it was used to create division between people. Qur'an recitation insert, Surah Al-Baqarah 2:102.
وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم.
And that line matters deeply, because it places a limit at the heart of every dark story people fear. Yes, magic is treated seriously. Yes, it is portrayed as dangerous. Yes, it is condemned. But it is never given absolute power. That is the boundary the Quran draws. Nothing harms outside the permission of Allah. So in Islam, magic is not some free, unstoppable force roaming beyond control. It is frightening, yes. It is corrupt, yes. It is dangerous, yes. But it is never beyond God. And this is where folklore begins to grow around the religious core. In the minds of many people, the sorcerer is not frightening because he is strong on his own. He is frightening because he is believed to seek help from something unseen. In other words, folklore does not imagine the sorcerer as someone who merely speaks strange words, or carries unusual objects, or performs bizarre rituals. It imagines him as someone trying to reach into another side, trying to open a door, trying to ask for help from what should never be asked. And that is why the image of the sorcerer feels not merely mysterious, but dark. Because fear begins when a human being feels defenseless before something he cannot see. And this fear is not entirely detached from religion. In Al-Baqarah 2:102, the Qur'an links magic with devils teaching people what leads them astray. That is one reason many people came to associate sorcery with satanic influence and unseen corruption. So this fear was not created out of nothing. People did not invent this connection in a vacuum. But even here, another line must be drawn. In Islam, magic is never a legitimate source of power. It is not presented as hidden wisdom. It is not treated as a special gift. It is not romanticized as secret knowledge. It is seen as a dangerous deviation. And perhaps this is the most disturbing part. Because in many traditional stories, the sorcerer's power is believed to come not from within himself, but through a relationship with unseen beings. That relationship is described through whispers, through symbols, through knots, through objects tied to a specific person. A strand of hair, a clipping of nails, a folded piece of paper, a name written down, a knotted string, a small object buried in the earth. For generations, people have feared these things for one reason. Not because the objects themselves are believed to contain power, but because they are thought to create a link to a target. In other words, according to folklore, magic does not work only through spoken words. It works through symbol, intention, and connection. And that is why the image of the Qur'an became so haunting in Muslim memory.
قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد.
That single image, blowing into knots, is enough to explain why tied cords, strange writings, buried objects, and obscure symbols became so deeply unsettling in the popular imagination. And what do people believe magic is most often used for? In folk belief, the answer is usually the same: to divide people, to separate one person from another, to create fear, to stir conflict, to disturb a home, to poison love, to tear hearts apart. And here again, people often point back to Al-Baqarah 102, because it mentions using such knowledge to cause division, especially between people. That is why the most feared categories of sorcery in popular culture often circle around the same themes: separation, domination, emotional control, unrest, and ruin. But this is where caution becomes necessary. Because not every fear is magic. Not every nightmare is an unseen attack. Not every family problem, psychological crisis, or health issue can be explained through sorcery. And this is exactly where many people begin to lose their balance. Eventually, they start connecting every misfortune to unseen harm. Every dark night becomes a sign. Every coincidence becomes an attack. And fear begins to overpower reality. That is why Islam does not only warn against magic itself, it also teaches that fear must not be allowed to grow without limits. Because if a person becomes so afraid of the unseen that he explains everything through it, then something even more dangerous appears: the fear of magic itself. And perhaps that is the darkest point of all. According to some traditional beliefs, in order to gain help from unseen beings, the sorcerer must submit to them. So the issue is not merely asking for help, it becomes a form of dark obedience. In popular imagination, this obedience is often linked with sin, with desecration, with disrespect toward what is sacred, with rituals that drag a person into spiritual humiliation. Because many people believe one thing: satanic help always has a cost. No dark support comes free. And that is why sorcery is not viewed merely as a forbidden technique, but as a path that can corrupt faith itself. So when people ask, who do sorcerers really call upon? The answer usually comes in two layers. According to popular belief, they call upon jinn and satanic forces. According to Islam, entering such a path is itself already a grave deviation. But now we come to the most important part of all. In the middle of all these dark stories, Islam's answer is not simply to frighten people. Its deeper answer is to restore balance. Because in the Quranic worldview, the existence of magic does not mean fear should become endless. The existence of jinn does not mean life should revolve around them. The existence of the unseen does not mean a human being is helpless. On the contrary, all of these fears are placed beneath one statement: nothing can harm except by Allah's permission. That sentence is a boundary in the middle of darkness, a wall, a point of balance. For a Muslim, the center is not the sorcerer, not the jinn, not talismans, not amulets, not unseen beings. The center is the power of Allah. And that is why in the Islamic tradition, protection is not found by searching for another form of magic. It is not found by calling on one darkness to fight another. It is not found in trying to control the unseen through forbidden means. Protection lies in prayer, in remembrance, in the Qur'an, in turning toward Allah, and in refusing to feed obsessive fear. Because sometimes the thing that destroys a person is not magic itself, but the inner darkness created by living as if he is constantly under its shadow. And perhaps the most frightening truth is this: some people do not become prisoners of magic. They become prisoners of the idea of magic. They begin to see signs in every shadow, attacks in every hardship, a hidden force behind every silence, every nightmare, every setback. And that is when darkness truly begins to enter the home. Not necessarily as a jinn, not necessarily as a spell, but as fear settling into the human soul. That is why Islam's strongest answer is not merely, yes, magic exists. Its strongest answer is this: let fear not grow greater than faith. Let false paths not be followed. Let the heart seek refuge in Allah. And in the end, one question remains: are people really afraid of magic itself? Or are they afraid of not being able to control anything about the unseen world?